Good morning, all you audience out there. Life is good. I'd like to bring the February meeting of the Beach Inlet Sound Advisory Committee to order. Please put your telephones on mute or silent or something so you won't be ringing. And we're happy to have the two of you out there and all of you out in Netherlands. Thank y'all for attending, and so I'll get this meeting started. First thing I'd like to do is ask for an approval of the agenda. Everybody should have gotten theirs. Do I have a motion?
A motion to approve the agenda.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, and I'd like to, next, I'd like to ask for approval of the January 16th minutes.
Use your microphones too, please.
Oh, yes, please.
To help with
Motion to
recording.
approve? Motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. We've now reached our monumental position of public comments. If anyone has any comments, does anyone have any comments? Anyone like to make any comments or questions? Very good. Well, we're glad to have you all with us, and you'll get another opportunity further down the agenda. So if you get all excited and rejuvenated and think you need to ask a question, then you're certainly going to be welcome. Okay, let's move on down, and now let's call on Manager Darian for a current status of our shoreline protection projects.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Our beach projects, we still have the Phase 5 project that's actively taking place. They continue to work Monday through Saturday to haul and place sand. We're on track to complete the project by the end of the current environmental window, which ends on April 30th. We're still working with the contractor to secure the start date to finish up the Phase 1 project with the additional 20,000 cubic yards. And the engineers are still assessing and working on a recommendation and what those costs might be too as a result of the recent beach surveys that we requested based on the recent 2 storms. So any additional work will likely be considered at the next Board of Aldermen meeting. I have not received anything further on that yet. The next item that I have is not necessarily a beach project, but I do want to bring it up to this committee because I do feel that it is relevant. The town submitted a letter of support of the Temporary Coastal Resource Commission rules. Comments on this matter are being accepted by the Division of Coastal Management through February 22nd. A few of the most pressing concerns are, if you're not already aware of this, is the proposed temporary rules are necessary under the Federal Coastal Zone Management Act. The loss of these rules could trigger a review of the North Carolina's Coastal Area Management Act, which we always refer to as CAMA, and we could potentially lose federal benefits such as those utilized for beach nourishment projects. So again, that's why I feel it's important to bring it up to this committee, just so you're aware if you're not already. The rules are necessary to protect valuable state resources. This includes unique geologic formations, significant coastal archaeological resources that protect heritages such as Bermuda Island. If you're not familiar with Bermuda Island, the CRC designates this as a significant coastal 25 archaeological resource area of environmental concern. It's a former barrier island located within the 26 Stump Sound area, so it's in Onslow County. It's close to us, and we have a vested interest in to protect this area. The island is 1.2 miles long and 1.25 miles wide. The island has historic occupations predating the Revolutionary War. Archaeological 29 remains on the island. It consists of discrete shell heaps, broad and thick layers of shell midden, prehistoric refuse pits, and 30 post holes, as well as numerous ceramic vessel fragments and well-preserved animal bones that remain. in this, with the Bermuda Island, they have also an advisory committee that I often partake in the meetings, and if anything that's brought up, I'll bring back to the board, but it's obviously an area of concern that we try to monitor and support when we can. The rules are also necessary for the evaluation and issuance of CAMA permit applications throughout the town. Loss of these rules can impact our ability to collect permit fees, process permit applications in a legally defensible manner. Not only would this create confusion and inconsistency within the permitting, but applicants would also be required to seek separate individual permit from the Army Corps of Engineers instead of a streamlined joint process that we currently have through the Division of Coastal Management. The rules create and explain necessary policies. Without the rules in place, the state may not be able to engage in consistency determinations impacting their ability to govern beneficial use of dredged materials. In short, the entire CAMA permitting process may fail. The loss of these regulations jeopardize the state's ability to avail itself to federal consistency review privileges and federal funding, like I mentioned above. Our memorandum of support that we had issued, we've already submitted it. Comments are accepted, written comments are accepted through February 22nd. Some of the things that we touched base on, of course, a highlight is our beach nourishment plans that we're all currently discussing and working on, which could be negatively impacted by potential loss of federal benefits, which we've relied on extensively in the past few years. Just as an example, the matching the $10.5 million grant that we've got for Phase 4. Our future plans call for a new project that would nourish an additional 5 miles of shoreline, but this project is dependent on coordination between Army Corps and the Division of Coastal Management, especially for both CAMA and federal permitting. Again, the temporary rules need to be put in place, and that's why we issued a letter of support, mainly because of that, and of course what I mentioned with the historical significance of Bermuda Island. That concludes my report. I know that was more of a side matter, but I think it's still relative to this board in what we discuss monthly.
Any questions or comments?
And Mike may have more to add on this as well.
Just a little bit more background. The temporary rules are the rules that have been in effect forever. Mm-hmm. What happened was the governor appointed a rules review commission, and the rules review commission back in October of last year declared that the current CAMA rules were no longer in effect. So all that resulted in the possibility of everything that Manager Durian just went through. So what we're supporting in this letter is the rules that have always been in place, but now we have to call them temporary rules because the rules that were current back in October are no longer effective because the Rule Review Commission had issues with the way the rules were written.
That was basically what I was going to say, was it's a continuation. Important thing is it's a continuation of existing rules, not a whole bunch of new temporary rules.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that about the commission, that they had said they were no longer valid. That's wonderful.
What is expected to be the outcome? I mean, what are they going to be doing?
So the CRC is meeting tomorrow and Thursday, and they're going to be discussing what they're going to do about the temporary rules, if they're going to make them temporary rules. They'll call them temporary rules, and hopefully we'll go on.
There's a rule review that's required, I think, every 10 years, something on that order of magnitude. Basically, the state was behind on their rule review. So consider it like a continuing resolution in Congress. Yeah. Is the best way to think of it. They just didn't get the rules review done in time, so they have to put temporary rules in place in order to move forward and basically go through and assess and say, okay, the rules we've had are great. You know, they're updating them. It's crazy because they update them legally every year. We had the whole HB 600 that was a whole regulatory review this year, but somehow that didn't qualify as our 10-year whatever, so. At any rate, they're not adding a whole bunch of stuff, it's just keeping everything in place.
So
under a new
we're,
name.
the hope is that they leave it like it is, and whether they call it permanent or whether they continue to call it temporary.
We don't care.
We don't care as long as they keep it.
Exactly, we just want to keep everything in place, the system in place. As she mentioned, the CZM, Coastal Zone Management Act, there are stuff where, well, for instance, like your EIS process going on with the terminal growing, that would get discombobulated because of the consistency things that have to be done by the state in order for that EIS to be produced by the Corps. Federal projects, the state would no longer be able to comment on federal projects because we wouldn't be eligible for consistency governing. So if the feds decided they wanted to deepen Southport to 70 feet, and the state said, no, we think this is a really bad idea, the state wouldn't have any more commenting power than you or I would. They wouldn't have the ability to just say no. So that's the big thing is that's why CAMA came into place when it did, and why we need to continue it.
Well, certainly we hope to continue to be able to go get money.
Yeah.
So I think it's important, so we surely need to stay on top of that. If there's anything that we can do, we need to do it. Thank you. All right, any other questions on
I had a
that?
question. Ellis, where are we with the Phase 4 project then, since 5 is?
We need to finish Phase 5, which the plan is now by April 30th. It may be a little bit sooner, and then to start immediately into Phase 4. So it may start this year, but it may be held off until the following season.
Okay, thank
It
you.
just
Just so you
depends
know-
on when they officially wrap with Phase 5.
Just so you know, they've already sent us the money for 4.
Right, I knew that. I was just curious. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Manager Darian. I'd like to now call on Member Benson if he'll just, since we went through the terms of the people and so now exactly where we stand with all that and who's where and who's what and what terms.
Okay, the Board of Aldermen at its last meeting, if you haven't heard, reappointed Alderman Grant, Terry Ward, and Deborah Coltrane.
John.
Oh, John. John Goddard reappointed them to a new 3-year term on the BISAC committee.
And just to refresh people, and Mike would do this anyway, if you remember, we first set this up, we wanted to have staggered terms. Okay, so the 3 of us got the good straw, the shorter term, the first time. And so that's why. Otherwise, you'd have to have everybody replaced at the same time, and it would just not make any sense to do that. It was more for continuity.
And the next,
Next year, you guys are up.
so the end of this year
Right.
will be up, end of
Right.
24.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
Right. Well, February of 25.
Yeah, February 25.
Year from,
Okay.
year from now.
So then we can just look forward to that date.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions or comments about that? All right.
Just a matter for the record, the members that you just mentioned, they were appointed through terms of February 7th, 2027. Just for matter of record. Because I know sometimes those details get lost, so I just want to make sure
Well,
they're
that's why I was
captured.
trying to figure out exactly where we all stood in that,
Yep.
in that venue.
So under number 7, Mr. Chairman, is this when Larry does the happy dance?
Yes, for sure. We're going to move right now to action taken by the Board of Aldermen at their February 7th meeting following the BISAC report. And, you know, as I sent out to the members, I mean, we did not get a total approval of the whole plan, but we did get the approval for initial funding for permitting and planning and all the things that needed to happen, which is a great sign, because it's a big chunk of change that's come out there. What was it, 670,000? And so, I'm asking, since both members Benson and Grant are part of that board, sort of what we think that we may be expecting coming from the board going forth on the rest of the approval.
Okay, let me just address for the people that weren't there. One of the concerns that we addressed in there is allocation of money, because we've got a fiscal year that ends at June 30th. So what we did as a board is we went ahead and improved what Chris had presented to us before, to do all of it, to do all the permitting, to get it all done. Because the concern was, if we get into June, and all of a sudden Chris says, well, I was gonna spend more than you had in this fiscal year, but all of a sudden we were gonna stop the permitting process because we were $10,000 short. It made no sense to anybody, because he's working on getting the permits done, which I assume he'll address, okay, and that was the whole thing. I would say that, and Mike, you can weigh in on here, without exception, I think that response of the Board of Aldermen was, this is the best thing that they've seen related to the beach, that, Steve, you guys were there, that it's really good to have a plan in place, all right, to move forward with this kind of stuff. And as we were just talking about before, is I think, and I think Mike and the board agree with this, we've got to have a plan that effectively gets every part of the beach to be an engineered beach, to understand we've got to put money into the beach every year and protect the beach, because, it's, if not the greatest asset we've got, right up there with public safety and everything else. And so, my feedback from the board members, Mike, we can weigh on this, was very positive. They didn't get, I think because you did a good job, Chris, talking about, they didn't go, oh my God, look at all this money, when you explained it. You understand a lot of this is federal funding, this is a 30-year plan, and all those type of things. But I think everybody was forward to getting all the permitting done, and I guess you'll probably talk about that a little bit today, to make sure we get the permitting in place, because that's the first step that we talked about. Chris, did you want anything?
Chris was definitely on his game.
Yeah, he's definitely on his A game on that one.
Yeah, I would just second what Alderman Grant said. But I think what we've got going is we've got the initial stages of a solution, if you want to call it a solution, to beach nourishment in North Topsail Beach. It's going to take a while to bring it to fruition, but when we get there, we're going to be happy campers, just like the town of Topsail Beach, who has a two dune system and 100 feet wide beach berm that they are renourishing this year. And we hope to kind of follow in their footsteps. And we've got Chris as our guide in this process. So we are on our way somewhere now. And the board will probably approve it step by step as we move along, and there'll be modifications and so forth that have to be made depending upon how the permitting goes. But we've got a plan in place now that we didn't have before this committee existed.
And then just one additional thing, and we talked about it here, was, if you remember how opportunistic we were on the Phase 4 stuff, only because the permits were in place. And so when money comes up, if we've got all the permitting in place, then we'll be able to go after funding, which I think is what, again, you're going to talk about when you get into those things. So,
And that,
thanks for the support of this group, too.
yes. I think everybody here has done a great job. I think this is something we've messed with for months and months and months. I don't say messed with, but we've worked with, and Chris has been diligent in getting everything to us. And I think that this committee has spent the time that it should have, and had the discussions that we should have, and asked the questions that we should have, and we're fortunate to have Chris's expertise to be able to help us move forward with that, and was very instrumental in us attaining our $10.5 million matching fund grant last year that we want to continue to be able to get with the things. So when we made the presentation this last month, or this month, whenever it was, I could tell by the response, just like Alderman Grant's talking about, I could tell by the response and the questions and just watching the people that they were very impressed with the program, and some of them actually said in the meeting that it was the best presentation they'd ever seen. And so I think that we've, as a committee, this committee has done a really good job in getting us to this point. We're at a monumental point for North Topsail Beach in moving forward with our overall beach plan. So I'm really proud to be a part of this group, and I thank you for all your dedication and all that we put into it for the last couple of years on this.
And for the record, he actually did a happy dance.
Yeah,
He really did. He was, you were a very happy young man
Absolutely.
walking out the
Well,
door. He was very happy.
I really, it was beginning to look like the meeting was just going to end and there wasn't going to be any action taken. And I said, well, are we going to do anything? I mean, we need to make, and then I will say that Alderman Grant and Benson both got into that process and sort of helped bring about the approval that we did get. So we're really on the move, and there's a lot that's going to happen. And if there's no questions or comments about this presentation, then what I'd like to do is I'd like to call on Chris Gibson what he said that he wants to talk about is the 5 and 30-year beach plan, the next steps, the scheduling, the permitting process, the expectations the BISAC and Board of Aldermen should have in that process, and the do's and don'ts with public communications by the committee. Yeah. And I have written this in here exactly the way that he said it to me, and I knew exactly what he was saying, but I'm gonna let him put it now in the words that make sense. Thank y'all. Chris?
Thank you, Larry. So I don't have a presentation today, and that is intentional. I want to talk because a lot of what we're going to talk about today is a little bit political, and I don't think it's good to write politics down. Where we're going in the process, so as I mentioned, the board has approved us to essentially go forward with the permitting process and the design process for doing phases 1, 2, and 3, which will bring the town in its entirety into an engineered beach situation. Historically, we have done work over at the disposal island, DA 143. We've talked about this in the past. We know that there's roughly 2 million cubic yards of sand there, which is enough to do a very nice 60 to 70 yard per linear foot beach for the length from the north end all the way down to where we would tie into phase 4 at the 210 bridge here. So starting the process, the first thing we've got to do is go back and get our geotech redone because those things time out, and we also want to, knowing what we know of the site from 20 years ago, nail down a little bit more finite exactly. There's one corner of it because of where the weir box is. When you pump sand into a site like that, the sand stays on one end, the heavy material stays on one end, the mud runs toward the discharge. So we know that one corner of it is bad. We want to very closely delineate that area that's bad, stay out of it. Great material for building levees because it's got some plasticity to it. So we'll coordinate what we're doing, what we leave there, we'll use to rebuild levees around the site so that it can be used in the future for a disposal area, again, by the Corps of Engineers, and we can eventually, 30 years down the road, reuse it as a site again for beach renourishment. We will you broke my train of thought, bud.
I know. That note says, I'm going to break your train of thought, just so everybody knows.
So we want to look at that site. That'll be the first step in this process. Will be one of the first steps in this process. We're looking to do that sometime in the latter part of March. Most of that will be scheduling with the coring contractor and with getting a barge that's got to carry them over. It's pretty neat how they're going to do this. We've done it in the past. They do a pneumatic push probe that pushes a 3-inch diameter core It pushes it in 5-foot sections, so we get a continuous core that we're able to look at the whole length of the material. For this site, those cores will be about 60 feet in length, and we'll do about 20 of them over there. And that way we'll be able to delineate where all the material is, what's good, what's bad. We know that once we get down to a certain elevation, it's stump sound, it's bad. So we've got to, all of our excavation has to be above that elevation. So we'll delineate that very, very closely. And then once we get that as well, we'll do that, and we'll do a full-scale survey of the island as well, topographic at that time. And then we will develop a design for harvesting that material to put on the beach.
Before you leave that, just a quick question. And people, if you have questions for him, before my time, there was that rock issue relating to Phase 5. This is supposed to eliminate those type of issues where we get bad beach stuff. Is that the whole idea? You're trying to do an assessment of the quality of?
Correct. So we have to do an assessment of the quality. The rock is not going to be an issue in this site, but one of the things that will be an issue is because it's been placed in there, there may be clay lenses that are in there. Likely when we go to do the dredge placement, there will be a screening process on the end of on the discharge end, so that if we do have clay balls or peat layer that we have to chop up that comes intermittent in the sand, that we'll catch that. There's a new machine that came online about 4 or 5 years ago that's great. It's the sand goes through it, and it has a conveyor belt that it screens it and conveyors the stuff right into an off-road dump truck. And it's very portable, very mobile. I've got a video on my phone if anybody wants to see it, where they're extracting conch shells by the bucket load down in Panama City, on a project that my brother was the manager for Great Lakes on. But really great machine, relatively low cost, but it is great for environmental. If there were a rock issue, this is one way you clean up rock. That was what it was developed for. But it also works for clay balls or any kind of wood debris or any of that. So we will have plans in place to deal with that non-suitable material. That's part of our design process. As we're going through this as well, probably even before we go into doing the geotech, we will be submitting grant applications to the state. Currently, my plan is to go through the Shallow Draft Inlet Fund because there is money for siting disposal areas and improving disposal areas. This is one the Corps has designated that they would like to look to improve. And I want to go through the Shallow Draft Fund because it is a 3-to-1 match. The earlier we get that in place, the more monies that can be offset. I think we need to move faster. If we're looking at a 26 construction, we need to move faster than putting in the grant and then waiting to start. So there will be some monies that are spent that are non-matching at the beginning. Y'all have already budgeted that, so it's not anything that's coming out of your budget weird. But we would like to get as much matching on the engineering side as well as on the construction side. So we'll be putting in those grant applications here in March and April as well. I suspect that at a minimum, to see grants for 50% match, but we're looking for 75% match is our goal. Again, this is where we need to be careful with communications as we talk, because we need to look at this as very much as a dual purpose project, not just a beach renourishment project, that we are looking to advance the use of a disposal site which is derelict, because that is what triggers the grant funding at a 75% level. It's just beach renourishment, then the only possibility is a 50% level. So again, the communications on that is important, that we look at this as a dual purpose project with benefits to the whole surrounding area and the navigation maintenance for all of Sneed's Ferry, the Intercoastal Waterway, Cedar Bush Cut, all of that area. Without that benefit, that's not going to happen as far as the grants. Once we get all that data, we look to have a plan in place, hopefully have the grants in place, and have a design plan ready to go for our initial one-stop meeting in June, late June, early July. What we'll do is have an initial plan, how we intend to harvest this, because that is the tricky part, how we harvest this island, because it does sit on top of a mud layer so we can't just drive a dredge into the side of it like you would other places. We need to have that put together and put together with language that we can explain to regulators who are not engineers, so that they understand what we're doing and have a trust that we're doing things right, that we're not going to make a mess of stuff. So at that point, we would look to do the one-stop meeting. Within that, we would look at having our beach construction plan. One piece of that we've talked about
That's for 1, 2, and 3.
is for 1, 2, and 3, all in 1, 2, and 3. We would, at that point, be putting forth our, I'm sorry, let me knock this off, sorry.
Let me interrupt you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
The one-stop meeting, you say regulators, it would be DCM officials, Army Corps officials.
In any and all of the 13 agencies that review. So it would be Corps of Engineers, it would be, and from the Corps of Engineers, you would see not only regulatory, you would see, because of its navigation benefits, you would see folks from navigation, you would likely see folks from Fish and Wildlife Service. National Marine Fisheries and EPA usually do not show up to these meetings, although they will be commenting agencies. And then from the state, you will have 2 or 3 from DCM typically. You will have Division of Water Quality, North Carolina Marine Fisheries. You will have North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. Marine Fisheries, Wildlife Resources Commission, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are the ones that we usually have to work with the closest to make sure that we are not adversely impacting their species of concern. Those are usually the big 3. Maria, it's Ken, I think, with wildlife, with Marine Fisheries, and Kathy Matthews with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Those are the ones we have to coordinate with the closest. I believe Liz Hare is the permit coordinator for this area for the Corps. I know she's at the south end. I'm not sure if Onslow County is different, but I think she's the one for up here. So we'll have roughly 7 or 8 agencies, but there are another 5 to 6 agencies that have commenting authority. There may even be from land use that will have an interest in this, because 1, the island is owned by the state of North Carolina. 2, it may be looked at as a mining, may need a mining permit. Yeah, there are a bunch of hoops we're going to have to jump through. Also, as we've talked about, as part of our construction logistics at the north end, is putting in a temporary retention structure. Please write down those words. The temporary retention structure at the north end to help keep the sand from the sands that we put up in the beach club area, anything north of topsail reefs, from going back into the navigation channel to minimize that and manage that and not be a navigation impact. This is one concern that will be brought up, I am certain. I believe it's called a Section 408. And what it is if a project has impact to navigation or the Corps' navigation program. We will most likely have to go through that review. That is anywhere from 6 months to a year process. It realistically shouldn't take that long, but that's usually how long they take. And what they'll do, and what we need to be, one of the reasons we want to put in this temporary retention structure is because we don't want to have happen what happened at Mason's Inlet, and that was that project was deemed to be an impact to navigation maintenance and a cost impact to the Corps of Engineers. New Hanover County was required to maintain a 3,000-foot section of the intercoastal waterway in perpetuity. So about every 2 years, they have to dredge 35,000 yards out of the intercoastal waterway. They have since gotten it so that it's, they do it as a add-on to the core intercoastal waterway contract. It used to be separate, which was really problematic. The Corps finally decided to work more closely with them, and it's an add-on to the Corps' contract, but through the shallow draft MOA, the county and the state do stroke a check to the Corps of Engineers for maintaining that section every time they do it. We obviously want to avoid that here.
Yeah.
So that's what we'll do once we get to our, in July, let's say use July. Once we get to our one-stop meeting in July, we get the feedback from them and what we need to put into our initial project permit request. And then it will fully unfold as through the environmental analysis, the final going to 95% design, all of that will go in, and then it'll go under review. And the review typically takes between 180 and 270 days. And 180 to 270.
6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months. They say that there's 75 days to do it, but they can request extensions. I've never had one not request an extension. No offense to the agencies, but they are strapped for people, and this is a large-scale project with a lot of moving parts. So I would expect, if we're lucky, 6 months. I would hope to have comments back in 75 days for what they call an RAI, or request for additional information. We're usually pretty quick, usually a week or two to turn those around. And then it would probably be another set of those. And then finally on the third one, we would be at a permit decision. There may be some give and take along the way as we do that, and that's what that process is for. So what we would be looking at is hopefully sometime in March of '25 of having a permit in hand and having grants already taken care of and put in place. And then being able to go to construction in the fall of '25.
That's consistent with us finishing 4.
That's consistent with finishing 4
So you tail ended into 4 if you could.
Exactly. So 4 would finish up in the spring of '25, and we would start the dredging in the
The
fall.
next season.
In the fall of '25.
So we'd have continuous projects is my
We
point.
would have continuous projects.
And no more truck haul projects.
No more.
And no more truck roll projects.
No more trucks. The other side to that will give us some time is that, and we need to work through the TISPC as well as directly with I'm going to forget who the new Connie Wilson is.
Connie Wilson, state law.
Yeah, no, who's the new Connie Wilson?
She was
Dave?
replaced.
David Farrell. Couldn't remember his name. We'll need to work with him because what it'll do is we'll have opportunities here. I would like for us to reach out, and not only because of all the other people using the shallow draft, et cetera, there may be opportunities to get a legislated grant in the FY '25 budget. And that,
In our name, not in shallow draft.
not in shallow draft, a specific legislated grant cost share, and we may be able to do better than what we would do through shallow draft. We may be able to do better there if we go directly and go ahead and start that process after July, after we have the one stop, to start lobbying to look at if we can get a direct legislated grant. But the timing on that would be right because that would come up in the June session of '25 is when that budget would be done, and that would be very good for because we'd be working in FY '26. So that's kind of the plan where that goes. As far as how that dovetails into the 30-year program, again, the 30-year program is too big and too many variables to put it together now and try to permit it, because that will only hold up 1, 2, and 3. The big variable, one of the big variables is the terminal groin and also the sand retention structure. Those two things are big variables about how we deal with Area 1 and our long-term sources for sand. Legally, with the agreements that are up there, we can't use the inlet area for a borrow area until something is done that will maintain that northern end structurally.
Does that include the temporary structure?
That will be for the lawyers to discuss. I'll leave it at that. But we do need to have something in place to make sure that if a hole is dug there, the end of the island doesn't fall back in the hole. So that is the big variable for the 30-year plan, and whether or not we're able to utilize what we would see as a renewable resource of about 600,000 yards every 4 years or so, whether that resource is there or whether we have to go to a more offshore source. That's all dependent on that, and until we get through this first permitting process, we won't know that answer.
Okay, just for clarification, because I know there are benefits to having in place a 30-year plan. Are you making the distinction between permitting the 5-year? We're not saying we're not going to have a 30-year plan. We're just saying we want to permit the 5 years. Is that right?
What I'm saying is that we will have a 30-year plan ready to move forward with by the time we have the 5-year, the first project permitted. But until we sort out the variables in the first one, we can't put that together. And we will want to have that 30-year plan ready to go when we get all of this as engineered beach, because that is one of the responsibilities, criteria of the town to have, whether it's approved by the state or not, at least internally, a board-approved financial plan moving forward, that you're not being opportunistic. Otherwise, FEMA is going to take a back seat. And the whole purpose of being engineered is not, they don't like you taking pot shots. Oh, we put some sand out here. Can you give us some money? That's not the way it works. We have a plan for managing. We will assist you with your management.
So you're going to dovetail the two, is what you're telling me.
We're going to dovetail it, but I've got to sort out the variables first.
Okay.
So I want to go back, Chris, and ask you again, I think we covered this before. DA 143 is in the Cobra zone. And so putting that sand in phase 2 and 3 be no problem, because that's Cobra zone. But half of phase 1 is not in a Cobra zone. So are we going to be restricted from that standpoint? Is there going to have to be some kind of waiver or federal legislation to allow us for an exemption?
I do not believe so. And the reason being is that is an active disposal site for the Corps of Engineers. So this would be rehabilitating an active disposal site.
I agree, and the Corps is exempt from that COBA regulation, because that's where they deposit sand when they dredge the channel of Jacksonville and the ICW crossing. It goes in the phase 1 area from the Topsail Reef south. So the Corps is not subject to that rule, but will we be?
I don't believe in this case. I think if we were taking sand off of Onslow Beach, the spit at Onslow Beach, and putting it over here, I think we'd absolutely be problematic there. Okay. I think because it is a man-made disturbed feature, it is a constructed feature that we are changing. I don't believe that would be the case. Certainly that's one of the things that will obviously shake out right off the bat, but I can't imagine. Well, I can say this. When we harvested the one at Topsail Beach, it wasn't an issue.
Okay.
And the one at, I believe the one the one at Mason's Crossing, at Mason's Inlet Crossing, I believe is as well. And I don't believe there was an issue there. So I've never had an issue with Cobra Zone pulling sand out of a disposal site. Most of the time it's like, get rid of it, do something with it. Certainly I would think they would want us to do that rather than having destroying some other area to create another disposal area. So that's kind of where we lie in the plan, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of talking slow, and I'm not quite as tuned up as I was 2 weeks ago. But that's kind of the scenario, is that we're going to do the first field actions here in March, engineering June, July, beginnings of the permit process June, July. Hopefully have the permits in, the submissions in September, and then be looking at somewhere March.
Which ties right into the finishing four stuff.
Yep, ties into finishing four, ties into the proper bidding season, which is March, April for the fall. You don't want to wait much longer than that. People get jammed up. It also ties in with the budgeting timeframe
Both us and them.
for both you guys and the state. And there may be some lead time in there. We may be long enough out. There is some federal funding associated with rehabilitating these sites. This is one I know the Corps of Engineers is wanting to look at, but their timeline is just, it's not our timeline. So we may be able to pull some from there, and some assistance either with design or if nothing else, pushing the permitting envelope to make it happen. You know, we should have some positive instead of competitive feedback from the Corps, I would think.
So, and the fact that this is gonna be a turtle and bird sanctuary, is there money available?
Could be. Could very well be. If you look at what Oak Island did years ago, they did a one-time sea turtle habitat rehabilitation for their beach renourishment, and they got 75% federal cost share versus the 50-50 they would have gotten under a 50-year program. So there are opportunities like that. There are opportunities, Dare County is getting a big grant to help with their stuff from FEMA's mitigative measures. They're supposedly looking at 12 million they're looking to get out of FEMA, not for rehabilitation of an engineered beach, but new construction on beach renourishment, because it's reducing, I believe it's changing the flood zone. What they're doing is enough to change it from a VE to an AE zone. So there's some work there that's some things that are happening. You know, we'll reach out to Dare County and see exactly what is going on there. There's also, that was in the last big budget bill at the federal level, that big omnibus that was last year. There's several years of multi-billion-dollar grant pots that are coming out for this kind of stuff. Of course, that's national competition, so you're competing with everything from, you know, mongoose farming in North Dakota, but to beach renourishment. But if it's got an environmental edge to it, there is monies there that we can definitely look at as well.
And then just one quick clarification. The reason that you're only talking about 1, 2, and 3 is because the permits are already in place for 4 and 5.
Permits.
So we've already got, the engineered beaches will be 4 and 5 already. This is a continuation of that program. I just don't want people to think, oh, why are they only doing 1, 2, and 3? And we're back into that argument. The answer is, all we're doing in 1, 2, and 3 is what we did in 4 and 5.
Correct.
4 and 5 were done first.
Right.
Correct. So 5 is an engineered beach. Upon the completion of the project next winter,
Yep.
4 will be an engineered beach, and then with all going well, then 3, 2, and 1 will be engineered beaches the following year. One of the things people ask me before is, which way are you going to put the sand? When we do one, 2, and 3, are you going to start at the south and work north? Or are you going to start at the north, work south? Interesting process is we're actually going to start in the middle. So
Make everybody unhappy.
yeah, so I just wanted to tell people, because people ask, well, when am I, if we do this that year, when am I going to get sand? So the idea is this: from a weather, logistics, all sorts of stuff having to do with construction, and the amount of pipe that we would need and how the ease of putting it in. The easiest way to do this, in my mind, is we come down the waterway from DA 143 and cross the island where the power line is.
Or there's an easement.
And there's, or the power line easement there. There's actually one of the little bridges there and an empty lot across the street on the beachfront, so we can slide right under the beach, right on the bridge, come out on the beach. We'd hang a right turn and go south first, tie into 4, and then work our way north to Area 1 with having enough. And we always have a margin of error, so that we would see as we moved up into 1 how much we could bulk up, but finish up in 1. The idea is that the retention structure would go in right as we're completing 1, because we'd want to build that in the dry. You don't want to, my mind, it's about 500 feet long. We don't want to do that out where the cranes and everything have to wade out into the water. There's also a deep trough right there in that flood channel. So the easiest thing to do is to fill that in, which you can do very quickly, and then immediately put in the retention structure. And that structure goes in pretty quick. It's basically like, if you've ever seen a coffer dam put in where they put the steel sheet piles in.
I was a young engineer, I got to put one of those in. They're unbelievable. They're really fast.
Basically, for instance,
It's handling sheet.
all it is corrugated sheet metal, large scale, and they vibrate them, and they go right in. And then they take another one and put it in. And if you're putting in, say, for instance, like they're putting in a gas station at the corner of Country Club and 17 right now, and they've got a coffer dam in around where they're putting the tank in, because they didn't want the side slopes of the hole to have to go and the hole be 70 feet wider. They put in steel sheet pile and then dig the hole out in between the sheet pile, set the tank down in it, pull the sheet pile out, fill back in. So this will go in the same way. These sheets will be vibrated in. It probably won't take 4 or 5 days to put in. And then if it needed to be removed for some environmental reason, it would take about 48 hours to remove it. So it is, and the nice thing is it's steel, so it's not like it's going to get lost, because you go out with a metal detector. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to be sandbags. It's not going to get ripped up. It's a solid. It'll be a solid temporary structure that can be added to, downsized, removed, left in place, whatever. Bulked up, you know.
Would you do something though, and Alice had talked about this before, the difference in terms of how much sand you can put down doing it this way versus truck hauling? Because I think you did some kind of analysis about a truck haul, like what they were doing up in Topsail or down in Topsail versus truck haul. And it's like, you know, something that might have taken 6 months and a truck haul takes a month. And so, I mean, you can get this stuff done a lot faster, right?
At peak at Topsail, we were moving 5,000 dump truck loads a day. So 200 an hour, 24 hours a day.
And what's our truck haul doing here a day?
We're doing
Chris knows more than anyone.
we're doing roughly 100 trucks a day.
So 20 times.
And it's really not common. Truck haul projects are really not common.
But I
Drug projects are
thought
more.
we did that before. It was the what's the mobilization fee was so much to try to do something else. It just didn't pay for
Because we
itself.
didn't have a plan.
The reason that we went with truck haul, and it was under my, I'm not the engineer on the truck haul, but it was under my advice, was because when you looked at the first project, when you were just looking at 5, it was roughly 350, 400,000 yards, something like that. The first part of it was. And when you looked at mobilization and where we would have to get sand, because realistically the only place was down south of Topsail Beach, because the area offshore that we used before was an absolute no-go. And everything else that had been identified in front of this island by the Corps was outside of 3 miles, which takes you 2 years to go through BOEM, Bureau of Energy Land Management. Any rate, when you looked at it, when you looked at a $10 million mobilization fee for a hopper dredge, and then dispersed that over 300,000 yards, and then we're paying $18 to $20 a yard, you're looking at $50 a yard to do that versus $30 a yard for truck haul, and the quality of sand offshore was not nearly the quality of sand you were getting out of the mine. So it didn't make sense at the time. Had we known that all of 5 and that's what it is, and all of 4 being what it is, we're all gonna come together, and it ended up being 1 million cubic yards, it probably would have made sense to go the other way. But at the beginning.
Well, we didn't know we had 4, we did 5, so.
Yeah, we didn't know we had 4 when we did 5, so it just kind of, and then once you add it on to 5, it didn't make sense for just 4 to do a dredge. So it's just one of those things that, now we've got something that makes sense to do a dredge project.
Chris, on the retention wall, the temporary retention wall, is there a concern that those will rust? I mean, with the being metal?
They'll go in rusty.
Oh, they go in rusty.
They're orange looking when they're wet.
This, it's really, are you asking if they will rust and decay and go all the way through?
Yeah, where then you got leakage coming, through.
Long past what we're looking at as a service life.
Okay.
These sheet piles have typically a 50-year service life.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Well, you also have, the sand will block some of the stuff, and the kid with his finger in the dike, we've hired him, right?
Yeah, we've got the kid with the finger.
Got the dike kid too.
That's why we call it temporary.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I wasn't sure because the rate of things rust around here. I wasn't
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
We're talking 5 years.
If you're, like you look at all of the bulkheads at the ports everywhere in the world are built with this material. If you're going to go long term, you put in what's called cathodic protection. So basically,
Drop an anode.
you got it. So you end up screwing zincs to them, and then the zincs are serviced every 10 years or whatever, and they corrode instead of the steel. But there's cathodic and anodic protection.
I actually put an anode on my heating and cooling units, which they didn't do, because I'm like, that was the business that I was in, is every time we dug a hole, you had a pipe down there, you dropped an anode in. It's called a sacrificial anode, just like the zinc. But you see them in crab pots too. So when you talk to people, like, oh yeah, they've got those. I said, that's what an anode is, that's all it is. But it's amazing, we don't use them around here like we should.
If you've got an outboard engine, if you look on there's one that'll be on underneath your hydraulics. There's usually a U-shaped one, and then the tail fin behind the prop is usually a zinc anode.
Okay, this, if you look at does everybody,
I don't think that got circulated.
did everybody get a copy of the latest 5-year? Okay, I'll make sure that I get copies to everybody. I'll email copies to you.
That's the Board of Alderman presentation.
And this is the actual presentation that was made on the 7th of February to the board.
Right.
And so it's the final one, and it'd be good, I mean, if you had one right now, and if you were looking at it, what you would see that he's talking about is already spelled out in here, not to the detail that he's spelling it out, but it speaks to the design schedules and to the initial construction schedules, and most of what the time frames that he's talking about, these detail things now that's not part of what's in here, is in here for the scheduling type process, so you can kind of follow through that. And if in fact, and I would assume that if in fact we get major delays for some reason and we have to revamp, it'd be pretty easy then for him to go and say, okay, here's the new schedule because of what's happened. And I think that every member here ought to have a copy of this so you can sort of follow along, because we'll get minutes and all to detail a lot of what's being said, but if you look in here and you're trying to discuss it, there's no way we're ever going to discuss it the way Chris discusses it. But we'll have enough information that we can talk to I was
People
starting
that
to
ask
say
you
normal
questions.
people, but I don't know what a normal people are. But in any event, because people, I mean, I find myself having a lot of discussion with people about the kind of things we're doing, but I don't ever try to get into any detail with them because they don't want to hear that anyway. They just want to know, how does it affect me?
Well,
Yeah.
I can tell you, having made a couple of presentations, and I think everybody in this committee knows this, the urban legends that are out there in terms of what's going on the beach and where the sand's been and everything else. Matter of fact, I've been accused of lying about the numbers, even though they came from him and from Fran, about things. It's amazing. And it's like, that is something, actually, I think the next time that I make a presentation, I want to attach that so people can look at it to get an understanding about, because the thing that blows me away in this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if we get this stuff in place because of using the system that you're describing, this isn't something that takes 3 years to put sand in 1, 2, and 3, right? You can do it in
We'll do it between November and April.
the whole thing. 1, 2, and 3 get done in one shot.
So the time.
That to me is unbelievable.
The
Right.
length, the
I mean,
length
think
of
about
time.
that, and just in terms of the complaints about,
Yeah.
I didn't get here and didn't get here, it doesn't matter if you start in the middle.
See,
If you
Chris,
finish the
I-
whole thing in 3 months.
Yeah, I've got a
The
question.
actual operation is not gonna take that long. What's gonna take so long is getting all the approvals and getting all the permitting, get all the blessings, have all the meetings, satisfy all the entities that have to be involved in the process. Once we get it to the point to where it's time to go to work, I mean, that part will
Pull
be
the
a lot
trigger.
quicker, and be a lot quicker than we've seen 4 and 5 for the very reasons that we're just talking about.
Next
Chris,
year.
do you have anything else for today?
Chris, I've got a question for
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry.
The temporary retention structure, thanks for answering, you answered all my questions here. I had a bunch written down and you rattled them all off. The building out the sand and putting it in on dry land, you said 500 feet, is it gonna be longer than that at some point, or is that the final length, you think?
That's my back of the napkin, just looking at Google Earth right now. That's
Sure,
my
fair
thought.
enough, okay. The perpendicular wave action down there, especially like from my house towards the river, is that gonna be a issue, or talk about that a little bit? Because it's almost, if I got this right, perpendicular, it's almost, almost 90 degrees. It's like 60 degrees away from my house, pushing towards the river. So as we're building sand out there, are we just gonna be dumping it in? It's gonna be going right into the river, or we're gonna put so much sand it's gonna overwhelm that?
Basically, you're gonna do it so fast there
Fast.
at the end
Okay,
that it overwhelms it. And what you're gonna see is there's gonna be, as you're getting there, so from the reefs, what we would build out from the reefs to the end, 3 days is what you're talking about. And you can actually, we can actually start, we'll look at it, all of this will have to be coordinated closely. But we hopefully would look at if there's dry ground to work on, we
Yeah.
start working on dry ground. If there's sand that's bleeding off and already creating dry ground as we're moving north,
yeah,
then we start working on, then if we can, we start working on that.
I see.
Or if we can push out, just with dozers, we can push out a tongue to work off of.
Yeah.
Then maybe that goes in earlier. All that's gonna be a little bit of
Got it.
that's gonna get down into the brass tacks of logistics with the specific contract.
from the reef to the river in 3 days, that's a lot of sand. I'm all for it, man, that's great.
We were at station, what happened at Topsail, we were at station 230 on Sunday morning, and we finished up at 239 plus 63 last night. Did 1,000 feet of beach. And
This
day-
thing
day
is
and a
gonna
half.
look like, this is gonna be unbelievable when this starts, to be able to get that, what is it, 5 miles, Mike, did you say, a beach?
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Think about it like this. Topsail Beach has done 6 miles of beach since when they start, November.
we started the 3rd of December, and we will finish, we will have done basically the same size project, 1.9 million cubic yards. And we will have finished on Thursday. Right now, we've got about 20,000 yards left. They got one pipeline move, otherwise it'd be done tonight.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
So I have a couple points. So I want to go back and review what you said about communications, Chairman Struther. So we're all on the same page. When anybody asks us about the project, now we're going to keep the sand from going into New River Inlet, the wording is temporary restraining structure. Right?
TRS,
TRS.
which is different than TS.
And the other thing I wanted to bring up, and I know this is kind of out of the blue, maybe I should have put it on the agenda, but last week I had opportunity to participate in a tour that Chris Gibson led of the Topsail Beach Shoreline Nourishment Project. And it was very enlightening. I think because we got to see the dredge, and we got to see the dredge pipe, and we got to see the beach that was being built, but we also saw the dune structure that's in place. And we talked about possibly having the BISAC committee do a tour of the beach, not the dredge, a tour of the beach, so that we can actually see kind of what the finished project looks like, where we're going, because we're kind of aiming for the same thing that's being done in Topsail Beach. So I don't know if we want to consider, Chairman, trying to get this group together to do like a 1-hour tour of the project in Topsail Beach or
Not a
not.
3-hour tour.
No. What, is everybody
Thanks,
in for
Gilligan.
that? Take a tour of that? When might be the best times to do that? I mean,
Pick the coldest, windiest day of the year.
yeah.
Well, I mean, at this point, the project is kind of finishing up, so you're not going to see actual construction. So I think probably any time
We should just do next BISAC meeting.
is we can take the next BISAC meeting and go out there and
Would that work for everybody? I mean,
and
Then
see-
it's already on our calendar as well.
Yeah,
Just do
yeah,
next
we'll
BISAC
just do a running meeting next time.
because I think that this meeting, this meeting was very important to get, to see exactly what got approved and where we were gonna go from here, and to make sure that we were all in the know of what we could expect now over the next several months. And so that works for me. Does it work for everybody? Do I don't think I need
It's
a
already
motion
on our
for that.
calendar. I think it's a great idea.
So we just want to do that then for March the 19th, Tuesday, March the 19th.
Okay.
That's when our next meeting is scheduled, Tuesday, March the 19th at 10:30.
Okay.
So we'll just get the plans on where we're going to meet and what we're going to do. And we'll email that out to you after we
Perfect.
discuss what's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Is that fine with everybody? Okay.
Absolutely. There's one more thing I wanted to add to the schedule of stuff that I would like to do. As we get into, I don't think it's appropriate to do it before the one-stop meeting, but as we get into HIP season, toward Labor Day, I think it would be good to have one Saturday do a public forum and let everybody know what we're doing, what kind of the plans are, unless there's an opposition to that. But just kind of because we do have, the Coconut Telegraph around here is not the greatest form of communication. It might be good to put it out there in reality. But let's see what some of these variables work out after the one stop, and then move forward with that.
I think that would be something that the Board of Aldermen would have to put together, and then have it be, because we have to notice it, we do all that kind of stuff for people, and then set up the meetings and going through all that stuff, because I think that to have something like that, we're gonna have to do an education process, and no offense, when we've had these in the past, whether it's a planning board meeting or it's a whatever, we have 2 or 3 people show up for these kind of things, and it's just, we need to make sure that that we can get as much attendance as we can in this thing, but that means a notice and going through the Board of Aldermen.
And I think that certainly that's not anything that we would be putting on any kind of schedule until the board has actually done their final approvals and we've got everything in hand, and we're, and you're right, I mean, after the one stops, after the one stops and we're closer to knowing that we're fixing to go, we got some closer to dates that we can feel comfortable with.
Well, just real quick, and that would be after the public filings have been made, right? So that they know we've already got something
is what-
that's a public document that talks about what we're doing,
And-
So
and it would-
otherwise, if it's, we think we're gonna do this kind of stuff, like the discussions we have here are pretty general. To have a discussion like that, but if we're saying, here's what we found, here's what we're looking at doing, here's the process, we hope to get this thing done, I think that makes a lot more
Well,
sense.
and it would be, I think it would just be good during the public comment period, that they can,
That's what I was
they can
thinking.
comment to the permitting agencies. Maybe you want that, maybe you
Form
don't.
letters.
You know, but at that point, just to let people know, and we actually, at Topsail, we usually have pretty good turnout. We do those about every other year, just as we're going now. We did a lot of them at the beginning, but we do one about every other year. It's usually done in the spring, because we're usually finished, like after we finish up this project, we'll probably do one around Memorial Day and let everybody know, this is what we did, and this is where we're looking down the road, and this is a 30-year plan, and this is what we're looking at doing for zoning and that kind of thing that was associated with this. But attendance at those is usually 50, 60 people. So, but we get the word out early.
Yeah.
Start putting the word out 3-4 months in advance.
And you'll bring donuts.
Mike, did you
That's
have
what
another
it takes.
question? Was that the biggest?
I think it's a good idea. I was just gonna say that we could combine the public forum, not just with the beach plan, but it could also be other issues that the board is addressing, so.
Yeah.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman and other board members. I have to go. So when it comes time to adjourn, I vote yes by proxy.
Are you going to fly again?
No.
He's not in uniform this time.
No, I'm not.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
I've got a question.
Yes,
This
John.
tour that I'm very interested in, will there be pictures of some type that we can see the end result and what it looked like before?
Yeah, actually, we had a whole bunch of, and I can bring them to the meeting next time. We had a whole bunch of posters done of, action photos of everything happening.
That'd be nice. That'd be
Um,
wonderful.
the 24 by 36 posters that we did. So I can have those. We've also got a slideshow of different things.
Who does this, Jeff?
Good.
Wenzel?
What's that?
Posters.
Who made the posters?
It's probably Jeff. He does
I mean,
most
our
of
guys put them together and took them to a print shop and had them
Okay.
printed. And put on foam board. I don't know. Honestly, don't know.
That's one of those A and B questions, and he's not involved in that.
I just said, put me some.
Is-
Okay.
One quick question, is that, thinking about the posters you were just referring to for Topsail Beach, is that something we can plan to do here? Because I think that would be really good for all of us residents to see our progress, because sometimes you sit there and you say nothing's been done,
Right.
but yet when you really look at where you were before and where you are now, even if it's still in the process, that might help some of the residents.
Absolutely. That's, and we're taking work photos as we go along on a regular basis as it is. So
That's
there's,
in our stuff yard too.
yeah, so there's
Even the phase 5 stuff, they take pictures of. so.
there's documentation. The guys go out and just for kicks, about once a month, take the drone up and fly it and just to see what all we've got. So yeah, we could definitely put some stuff together for y'all. And there may be some historic, if we go back and look at some historic stuff that y'all may have. Five, if you look from where 5 was from the beginning of when 5 started and where you are now, even when
I would
people,
love
even
to
when,
see what
even when
those-
I mean,
people,
I live there, so I know.
even
I
when
mean,
people
it's a
think
lot.
it's looking bad, it's still so much better than it was 10 years ago.
And I think that's what's helpful,
Yeah.
is that people, because you forget, or
Short
it's hard
memory.
to have a point of reference.
Short memory.
And we're seeing that at times, even at Topsail. We've got the dunes down there. You really got to go see them because it's so naturalized. It doesn't look like there's ever been a beach project there, even right where the project's happening. And you got people that are like, "Oh my God, the beach is so eroded." I'm like, you look at the steps that are coming down behind 2 rows of stairs. I'm like, that's where your high water mark was 10 years ago. There's 2 rows of dunes in front of that. And then there's 175 feet of beach.
Okay.
So it's
Thank you, Chris. You did a great job, and thank you, committee members. It's been a long time coming, but I feel like we're really moving at this point in time, and I'm grateful for that. Okay, we're back down to a public comment section. Does anybody have any questions or comments now that you'd like to make? Hearing none. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, March the 19th at 10:30. And once we decide exactly how we're going to
Venue.
to deal with the venue and the trip and what we're going to do, then we'll send that out in the agenda when we send out or tell you what we're going to do. So
Let's
But
be a
there will
little,
not, I think you need to clarify that there will not be a meeting
there
here.
will not be a
for-
meeting here, yes. So don't any public plan on attending here, because we will not be meeting here. We will meet someplace and make our journey south. And we'll spend our time there, and we will still have maybe some discussion things we'll talk about, but.
let's keep a wide time window open, because we probably want to schedule it so that it's low tide and the vehicles can drive on the beach, okay? So it may not be exactly 10:30.
We'll fill all that out, and we'll give you as much notice as we can, more than, well, we'll always give you at least a week anyway, but, so we'll have that figured out. Okay, do I hear a motion for adjournment?
I motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second. Oh, no, go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
And by proxy, aye.
We're adjourned, thank you.